Hey guys, this is Hell Hades. This is going to be another Raid Shadow Legends video. Guys, there's been tons of changes to Poisoners over the last 6 months really, since I last put out my kind of clan boss best Poisoners. I'm going to go through and drop information about who does the most damage, who's got the best kits, and we're going to do it in a kind of ranked fashion. This will have a tier list element. I'm not saying that you should take into account my tier list, or that you shouldn't, or that you should go and check out my website for tier lists, although there is information in there. I can read people's skills, and therefore I do have a knowledge of what they might be able to do, but you don't necessarily need to take that into account or not need to take it into account. You could go and check a different content creator's view of these same champions, but you don't necessarily need to take their view into account or not take it into account. You can come up with your own ideas. Let's go. So, Poisoners 2021. What I've done here is I've ranked all of the big Poisoner champions from rare to epic to legendary. And I've kind of pulled out what I see as the stats which really determine whether a Poisoner is good or not. So when we're talking about clan boss, we want someone that can stay alive for a long time. We want someone that can potentially bring some more utility to our team. We want good amounts of poison, because poison's still the best way to do damage on clan boss, in my opinion, over a long period of time. And then what I've done is I've put a damage potential column to say if they land their poisons to their kind of percentage chance to land poisons, what's their damage potential versus other champions. We'll see that ranked at the end. I've got the first column there as a damage potential based on no counter-attacker being in the team. I've then got the second column based on there being like a counter-attacker or an ally attack champion in your team. So you can kind of see how people change from having that support to counter-attack and get more hits in. Some of the abilities directly scale from more hits, and some abilities don't scale at all from more hits. It's a completely different kind of mechanic. I've then said, how would I rank these champions if they were unbooked? How easy are they to book? What would I rank them if they were booked? And then what potential clan boss can they face? Then they've got a score, okay? And it's all my opinion. So again, you can kind of go in and do what you want with it. But what it should do is it just gives you more knowledge around what I look at for champions and how I then score them against those different things. So if we was to look at, for example, a couple of the new ones, let's look at Tiger Soul here. Tiger Soul comes in with a really strong base defense. If you've got a strong base defense, you can build your defense up easier to a good cap for clan boss, and therefore you can stay alive into the fight much longer, or it's much easier to get to the defense level to keep your team alive much longer. Now, if you're building an unkillable team, you don't even care about this first column. The first column's irrelevant to you. So defense means nothing, therefore you discount that points, and really if you're building an unkillable team, you go straight to the column that looks at the damage potential. And then you think to yourself, am I running an unkillable team with a counter-attacker or not? So some teams do have counter-attackers, most actually don't. Some have ally attackers. So you kind of want to look at this column here that says damage potential without a counter-attack, if that's the type of unkillable team you're running. So couple of call-outs here. We know that Frozen Banshee's a strong champion, and in this type of grid, we can really see why. She performs extremely well in an unkillable team because her poison damage is high. She's got a high base defense, which means if you're not running an unkillable team, she scores extremely high. She's also got a relatively easy set to book, which means it's quite cheap to book her, therefore she ranks highly. She comes out with 42 points, which is really, really strong. We'll go on to epics in a second. If we see this kind of starter hero, Kale, doesn't do as well in an unkillable kind of setup, has quite a low base defense, no other utility for your team. So although he's a good starter champion and definitely one that people should use, you can kind of see how quickly you can upgrade to some other champions. And then if you're talking about someone like Avir, well, Avir has actually got a fairly weak poison potential, which is what we're talking about here. However, he does bring a couple of other juicy bonuses like decrease attack, turn me to fill, and a heal, which if you're not running a counter-attack team and you want like a secondary poisoner, so not a primary poisoner, but a secondary poisoner, then he could come in do some poison damage for you, but he's really more there as a utility champion that with a good base defense can be kept alive. So that's your rares. As I say, we'll get onto the kind of ranking system at the end. Epics then. So epics, there's been a couple of new epics since I first did this tier list. I mean, it might even be a year ago that I put this out last time. So one of the surprises, always good for me when I do this type of thing, because I have a perception of champions in my head. And one of the big surprises for me was Aether. So Aether, I knew that he had a good poison ability, but when I look at his potential damage, if you're not running a counter-attack champion versus other epics, actually it's really high. Now, his base defense is very low, which means that he doesn't really get played a lot in standard clan boss teams. But if you're considering him for an unkillable team, even if you compare it to Frozen Banshee, he's actually got the same damage potential in terms of number of poison buffs in a clan boss cycle as a Frozen Banshee. So really, really good one to pull out. Taurus actually comes out pretty strong here as well. And also brings us a weaken, which is quite a nice one. Eriness actually scores better than I thought she would as well. But again, quite a low base defense. You'll see the biggest weakness of most poisoners is their defense number. Which brings me to our new champion, Ayox the Rememberer. Really high base defense, the second highest base defense for any poisoner in the game. So if you're not running an unkillable team, okay, his damage potential is kind of mediocre. But as a secondary poisoner, to go alongside a Frozen Banshee or a Fane or someone, actually he's really good. Really good. He brings a lot of other utility as well. Decreased attack, decreased crit rate, AoE heal, and a debuff extension. So I don't have him yet. I've not properly playtested him. So at the moment, I'm just reading skills and giving you my opinion on what they look like, which can't be like a full playtest, clearly. But from my knowledge, that feels like a good champion to me. And he scores pretty highly, 36 points on this grid. But he wouldn't be the strongest in an unkillable team. When you look at someone like an Occult Brawler that poisons like a beast, he gets 61 points for damage in a kind of like damage setup unkillable team without counterattack. Really, really strong. He just does equally as strong when you talk about him with a counterattack champion in your lineup as well. So he's actually one of the highest performing damage dealers in the game for poison alone. Fane actually surprised me as probably a lower scoring champion than I expected, but this is based on their ability to poison. Now, Fane also brings decreased defense, weaken, decreased attack, so there's other bonuses that she brings into your team, which massively can help a team. But when we're talking about, you know, who's the best poisoners in the game, Fane actually doesn't come into the kind of real top echelon in this setup. Let's go on to Legendary then. So Legendary champions here. There are a couple new ones since I did this last time. And there's also been some big changes in the recent patch. So the big standout change is that Nephril now doesn't use his A2 and doesn't use his A3 on the clan boss on auto, which has massively spiked his damage. So he's now come in as a really solid contender for a damage dealer for either a no counterattack, but especially if you've got a counterattack kind of setup in your team or an ally attack setup in your team. He doesn't bring any other utility, so he's purely in there for damage, a bit like a Occult Brawler, but he brings it with menace. Like, he's really, really strong at that. Draco, we can see why Draco's so widely respected in this role. Not only does he bring good utility, he's got great base defense, and he poisons really strong. He does a lot of damage. The thing with a Draco, though, is his damage does not scale up at all if you're running like a counterattack or a ally attack in terms of his poison damage. He will do no more damage in that setup. So his ability is all based on a single skill, not like a hit ability. So that's why we don't see any sort of scaling up here. Xavier recently had a change. She has kind of gone up the ranks a bit from that, but still not crazy good. I would kind of start to look at her for maybe unkillable teams. 36 base damage there is not bad, but there's a lot of people that kind of outscale that now. And then we've got Nama at the bottom here, who's got the best base defense from any of the poisoners, but doesn't bring crazy amounts of damage. So she's more in there really as your utility damage dealer, not as your kind of main damage dealer. So again, if you were running like a Nama alongside a Frozen Banshee, that works well. Nama alongside a Xavier, amazing. But Nama on her own probably doesn't bring you enough poison. So what we've done from here is we've taken it into the tier list, literally gone from who ranked the lowest score up to who ranked the highest score. And a few call outs, I guess. So, you know, it's nice to see rares, Grave Chill and Frozen Banshee, the two best performing rares here. They're outperforming some of the epics and legendaries. That's nice to see. It's good to start to see some of those champions that have had changes done coming up to the higher ranks now, like a Nephril. And someone like a Xavier now has kind of at least got herself a bit of a place amongst the crew. I like to see new champions like Ayox coming in and actually looking like a really strong contender. But as I said, as an off poisoner rather than your main poisoner. Aether surprised me, higher than I thought he would be. And Eriness scored a higher score than I thought she would as well, actually. So really good to see it kind of laid out like this so you can get a feel for who do you have and then go back to the damage charts and think to yourself, well, do they do enough damage on their own? And really, if they're not doing 50 points of damage, then they're too weak to be on their own as your only source of poison. We've then looked at, well, if I don't have a counter-attacker, who are the best damage dealers? Okay, so I've left the tier list in the same order that it was here, weakest to strongest. But what I've done now is I've just overlaid it with, okay, so although we've got Taurus as a weaker champion on the tier list, actually as just a damage potential in like an unkillable team, he outranks a lot of that kind of higher tier. So he outranks a Nama, he outranks a Steel Skull, he outranks an Ayox, he outranks a Venus, albeit those champions bring other stuff, yeah? Fane as well. They bring other stuff like your decreased defense and weaken. So you have to think with your own brain, am I bringing other stuff to the table that's going to counter that? Or do I just want someone who's going to come in and do the best possible damage per poison tick that I can get? So Taurus kind of comes in as a bit of a surprise for me. As I said earlier, Aether does as well. Nephril is now kind of playing with the big boys in terms of damage. But Occult Brawler comes out as the absolute winner. So if you're not running a counter-attack champion, Occult Brawler out-damages everyone else for just poison damage. If you are running some sort of counter-attack comp or ally attack comp, then it looks very different. Look at this. Look at the way it changes. So Nephril comes out as the absolute winner now, which is brand new info, guys. Nephril is now the strongest poisoner in the game. Frozen Banshee pops up in second place if you've got that setup going on. Occult Brawler is still strong. And then you have other champions like Venus starting to come into the mix. Xavier really kind of gains ground if you've got a counter-attack going on. And Eriness actually does as well, which again is a massive surprise to me. So take this and use it as you need to. Hopefully, if nothing else, it teaches you something different about some of the champions that perhaps are in your vault. And what I would say is, you know, I'll post some of this stuff on the website as well. So if you want to come and look at it in a bit more detail, feel free to do that. Feel free to form your own opinions about what I've said. And hopefully it will help you build stronger clan boss teams. So guys, that has been the best poisoners for 2021 as of today. And hope you learned something new. I've been Hell Hades. I'll catch you later.